Bristol City, Millwall, good clubs. And then we'll get to our team, Sheffield United, in 2015. So how did that move come about, Martyn?
Well, I was... I knew I was leaving Millwall. I'd served my time there. My contracts were up. And I still had a bit of interest from the Championship. But I was... Sheffield United were interested when Clough was still there. And Sheffield United for me is a club that I'd obviously, growing up relatively local, I'm looking at the club and I'm thinking, one, it gets me home, which I'd been away from sort of friends and family for quite some time. But the two, for me, the main thing, I'm looking at the club and I knew the club had it in it to do what it did. Unfortunately, it was after I'd left, but I knew it always had the potential to do that, and I wanted to be a part of that. And then Clough left that summer, so I'm kind of thinking, right, well, that's kind of deal off, and I need to look at other things. And then it just happened to be Adkins that took over, and sort of having known him from York and having sort of success under him at York, at Scunthorpe, sorry, and then seeing sort of what he did at Southampton, it seemed like the perfect sort of comparison. And I'm thinking, right, I want to be a part of that. I were away that summer on holiday with Billy Sharp as well. So me and him were both talking and sort of calls going backwards and forwards with Adkins while we were away. And we were buzzing to be signing together because we're mates and we were before that friends through other teammates. So, I mean, we were buzzing and I was looking at it thinking, this is the perfect move for me. Like I say, it gets me back home to my family and to be joining such a great club with huge potential. As I say, it happened. It just didn't happen when I was there. But so, I mean, but I could see that, and you could always see that. You could see that sort of Sheffield United had been this sort of sleeping giant for a few frustrating years in League One. And it was only a matter of time. Like for me, it was just sort of bad timing, and it didn't work out. But I'd like to look back of that. There's a lot of good memories come out of that. For a start, there's some things that I'll touch on in a minute. But I can remember like it was yesterday, signing and going around and walking around the stadium and things like that. It was as much of a big of a deal for me as it was any of the other clubs. And like I said, there's been sort of there were Millwall in there in Championship, Bristol City, which is a big club. So to be going back to Sheffield and going back to Yorkshire, and despite it sort of being a step down in league, it didn't feel like a step down, which is why I sort of chose Sheffield United over exploring the Championship options.
That's some very good stuff that you just said about Sheffield United. So a lot of Sheffield United fans are going to be very, very happy with what you just said. But looking back on your time at Bramall Lane, how did you see it go? Obviously, it wasn't the most successful of seasons for the club. How did you see your time at Bramall Lane?
Frustrating and disappointing, to name just a few. I signed late in pre-season, and the frustrating thing for me there is that I kind of knew it was happening for a while. I knew it was happening before the team went back for pre-season, and it was a few weeks after that when I finally got the deal done. And to be honest, that couple of weeks I'd underestimated. It was the first time where I'd not had a proper pre-season, like right from the beginning, and I think I struggled from that to start with. I was behind the lads in terms of pace and being up to speed right from the off. And to be honest, I struggled to catch up. And before you know it in pre-season, especially when you've missed 2 or 3 weeks at the start, before you know it, the season's here, and I weren't quite ready. And do you know what that is down to me? Because I looking back now, I should have done more to make sure I was ready going into the season. And then, kind of once the season started, it was kind of like I was chasing my tail a little bit, because I'd been dragged at half time in the League Cup game, the cup game that before the season starts, and that hit me quite hard actually, because I always think there's a bit of I always think that's a tough. It's a bit of a harsh thing to do to a player. I always said if I went into management, I'd at least give it 5 or 10 minutes into the second half, just to let somebody kind of prove themselves. But the thing is, when you're not up to the pace, like the first thing that goes if you're not fit enough is your brain. It's not even your legs, it's your thing. So you start making tired decisions, and that's what we're doing right from the off at Sheffield United. And the more you start, the more you do that, the harder you're trying, but then the more the decision making goes out the window, and the more you continue to make sort of bad decisions. So it would a scramble from the off for me to get up, and then I were in and out of the team, and then it just repeats itself. So when you're going into the team, you're trying that little bit harder, you're trying too hard, and you're not. You kind of play. You're not just sort of playing your game, nice, relaxed, and just playing and enjoying the game. You've got it on your mind all the time. You're thinking, right, I need to prove it. I need to prove it this time. So you're trying and you overthink things. And as I say, it just becomes that repetitive cycle of trying to prove yourself. You're slightly off with your fitness because you've not had the run of games, and it's a tough position to be in, because you need to go in there and you need to like sort of be one of the best players in order to secure your place, and you know that as a player. But it's quite challenging, because you, like I say, you're slightly behind in fitness, and then you're overthinking it, trying to prove yourself. So it's, as I say, it's a really difficult position, and that was the first time I'd really found myself in that position after quite a few years of. Because, like I say, even looking right back to the York days when I first got it, I did get into the team quite early on, and then I got a run of games, and that's kind of everything. It's getting the run of games is hugely important as a player, because you get right up. You don't get to your full match fitness till after a few games. I don't care how hard you work on a training ground; it's not the same tempo as when you're out there playing the game. And it's difficult, it's hard to replicate. And then, as I say, because you're slightly off the pace, you're not performing at your best. So then you don't force your way into the team, and it just keeps going round. And yeah, that pretty much sums up the whole season for me. And it would get into the end, and I was trying harder and harder just to sort of make up for it. And as I say, the harder you try, the less relaxed you are, and the less like you're actually playing the game.
That makes so much sense, because there's been so many players in the past that sign late and then kind of don't start the first game, and then it takes them a few games, come on for as a sub a couple of games, and then eventually you see that they're getting up to the pace. But yeah, I can completely see that, and I don't know about you, Hal, but there's so many similarities there from what Dean Hammond was saying as well.
Spot on. I was about to bring that up. So Martyn, Dean kind of summed his time up in very similar ways. I was wondering, did you ever talk to Dean? Because it would have been perhaps interesting if you two had shared how you were feeling inside, because you might have both found a bit of common ground.
Do you know what? You don't open up like that as a player. It's only now that I could probably speak with. If you'd have been asking me at the time, my answer would have probably been clouded, to say the least. Like I probably would have like sort of shirked around that a little bit and sort of trying, and that's just a sort of a manly macho thing, I guess. You're not wanting to admit it to yourself that is the case, that you're struggling a little bit with confidence, that you kind of that you are struggling a little bit, like to kind of get back to you. You're not feeling yourself on the pitch. You're trying to. It's not an easy thing to sort of admit, and the changing room's sort of a strange place, because you trust the lads with everything, but it's still not a place where you really open up about sort of certain things, like in the way that you should really. But so no, I mean, like obviously spoke to Dean on totally different topics and things like that, but never to the point where we'd sort of open up in that way to say, look, I'm struggling here, like, how are you? you just don't do it, and you should really.
Yeah, I think it would have made a difference, because we now know he was having an awful time and he was very unhappy, and he didn't want to let that on to anyone, and he kept it all inside, and it actually really took its toll on him. And we were sad. We were very sad hearing that, because I think as fans, you literally just look at the physical ability of a footballer. You don't ever think about they might have had a bad night, they might not got any sleep, they might have problems going on at home, whatever, they might have had a terrible drive getting to the ground. You do not think of any of that. It is literally just, can you do it at 3 o'clock on a Saturday?